Now, Saturday sees the big fight, doesn't it? One of the biggest fights between two British boxers in history, really. Tyson Fury puts his WBC heavyweight title on the line against Dillian Whyte. It's a fight that has taken what seems like forever to put together. I'm going to look at this in a bit more detail now with former WBO super featherweight champion, Barry Jones. Barry, it's great to have you on board. Thanks for joining us. Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm well. I'm excited. It's a huge fight, and the fight week always has that tingle of anticipation. I'm looking forward to it.
Why has it taken so long to get this fight on in the first place?
Oh, it's been crazy. But obviously, there's a story about Dillian Whyte where he waited, almost 2 years for his title shot, and then got knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. Got his revenge in last March, almost a year to the month. But I think it's just been difficult because he was a mandatory challenger, and the fight went to purse bids, and then obviously with Frank Warren winning the purse bid, and then the way the purse bids are split up, it's like 70%, 30%, sometimes 80-20. But Dillian is a big draw, and he didn't think that was enough, so it just dragged on, and no one wanted to sign contracts. And it's, when you're dealing with millions of pounds, apparently I wouldn't know this, of course, but firsthand, and I'm sure I wish we did, but no one wants to leave a penny on the table, and I think that's where the issue, where it's dragged on for so long. But I think the main thing is that it's signed, it's done. Even though it's a mandatory challenge for Tyson Fury, it's still a dangerous fight. And also for Dillian Whyte, who waited so patiently for a couple of years to get his title shot. Obviously with Fury boxing Deontay Wilder, and that first fight being the draw, Dillian was meant to be next. But that went on to a rematch, and then obviously they signed a 3-fight deal. Only in boxing would crazy things like this happen, of course. But that just meant Dillian had to sit on the sideline, patiently waiting. So he deserves his opportunity, and he gets it. But sometimes they say, be careful what you wish for, because he's up against Tyson Fury, who's probably the most dominant heavyweight we've had since Lennox Lewis.
So do you buy this Dillian Whyte claim then that Tyson Fury's good at dodging the best opponents?
No, not at all. I think Tyson Fury's whole career is based on beating two fighters. To be fair, one's Vladimir Klitschko in Germany, which is no mean feat, by the way, because this is a Klitschko who was better than the one who had that tremendous fight with Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua won his world title in Wembley. What a fight that was! But actually, Fury had a better version of him. And obviously, then he came up and he had that great trilogy, and obviously the first fight was a draw against Deontay Wilder, who is the biggest puncher on the planet and one of the biggest punching heavyweights there's ever been, so statistically. So if he has been dodging people, the replacements have been pretty good. So I wouldn't tend to think it's been that. But still, they had only two fighters. I know 3 fights. You've had 3 fights on succession with Deontay Wilder. They've been 3 fantastic fights for their own different reasons. But it's still only against one fighter. So in the last sort of few years, he's only boxed one guy, where Whyte has boxed a variety of people, not at that level, but they've been good operators. And he hasn't been afraid of a challenge. I understand why he maybe thinks that way, but I tend to think that he's wrong. I think Tyson Fury I don't feel he's scared of anybody.
You've been there, you've done it, you know what all this trash talking and all the rest of it and the promotional stuff is beforehand. I mean, what do you make of Dillian Whyte's sort of refusal to get anything like as involved as Tyson Fury and all of that in the build-up?
I understand it, because he feels a little bit like he's been disrespected, that it's the Tyson Fury show, which it sort of is, but he thinks that his name is a big enough draw, and that's contributed massively towards the 94,000 tickets that have supposedly been sold. And he should be a bigger part of the promotion. And also the fact that he's getting less than what he thinks he deserves. Then he sort of thought, I'm only going to do the bare minimum of what I legally have to do. Now, that's him being quiet and silent and in Portugal in his training camp can work. That can be clever. If you're not sat there festering, thinking, I wish I was there so I could say this. If it's playing on your mind, it's a problem. If you're relaxed about it and you're thinking it's driving Tyson Fury mad and you feel you have the upper hand, and you're having a chance to not break camp for any moment and just going to concentrate on your training and all the things you're working on, then it can be a massive plus for him.
Okay, 2 more questions before we get into the nitty-gritty of who's going to come out on top. Do you buy into Tyson Fury's claims, for example, first of all, about his retirement after this fight, or is that just more hype?
No, I don't believe it. Like, I didn't believe the 15 other times that he was claiming to retire. The thing with Tyson Fury, though, he very well might retire. He's that sort of character. You can never, he's the king of wind-ups, and you just never show what's true and what's not true when he opens his mouth. That's just how he is. That's what makes him an engaging character and a colourful one at that. So, but I don't think he's not. He had a hard fight his last one against Deontay Wilder by his choice. I think the way he boxed, and he's earned a lot of money. But as we're seeing with other fighters nowadays, in Cal Brook, for instance, recently there's big fights out there, even at the end of your career. How do you turn down that money? And there's still that Anthony Joshua fight. No, this is huge, this fight now, Saturday night. But that fight's still a bigger fight. And it's still there. Even though Joshua doesn't have a world title, it's still a huge fight. And you don't want to leave that on. You don't want to retire and leave that. He might retire and go away for 6 months and come back. But that's not a real retirement. But I know. Tyson just said stuff for you to either deter you from what you really want to ask, or just for the sake of saying stuff. That's how he is.
Can't imagine a boxer ever doing that, Barry. And what about Dillian Whyte's claims that Tyson's team have treated him, quote unquote, like a nobody in this build-up, and in terms of the sort of expenses that he claims they were offering him Ryanair economy flights, for example, to trek around to the various promotional pieces. What do you make of all that?
Of course they're going to. Why wouldn't they? You'll speak to people who've boxed, Brits have gone to abroad, have gone to the US to box, and there's people knocking your door at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you'll get Americans say the same thing who've come over to the UK and boxed. All these things will happen. That's and any edge you can get, especially at the highest level, any edge you can get to rile that guy up, to get him out of his comfort zone, get him out of his mindset, is a weapon for you to use. So yeah, I'd have him sat literally right next to the toilet every time he flew. If that was the case, if that would wind him up, but it won't wind him up. But I understand why he's gone. Well, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to turn up. And let the games begin, and that's what's happened.
All right, we've done our trash talking, so let's get down. Let's get down to brass tacks. We've stepped in the ring. I mean, tell us about what you see as the relative strengths first of all. We'll do weaknesses after, but the strengths of the two fighters.
Well, the strength of Dillian Whyte, first of all, is his strength, his mindset, and also his physical strength. He's a physical fighter who can fight at a high pace, and likes to make you feel that power early and feel that strength early, and will put it on you. But his commitment to his attacks is what, one, gets him into trouble, but two, also gets him out of trouble, gets him those big wins, gets him those big knockouts. He will commit with every punch. And I think with someone like a Fury who likes to give you opportunities because he's so clever, he almost wants to trick you into a mistake, because sometimes beers undo it. Because and we're talking about a guy who's not the same size as Deontay Wilder, who was the biggest puncher on the planet, but who had to punch straight or down. This is a guy who's going to come in lower and shorter, and he's going to slide into distance and punch up. And those shots are harder to defend against, because you don't have the high guard with the elbows tucked in. You have to parry with the glove and push down with a punch. So that's a more difficult assessment for Fury to make in the ring. But the problem that he has, Dillian Whyte, is Fury can box a variety of different ways, any stage of the round, any stage of the fight. He is one of those mavericks who doesn't know what he's going to do until literally the bell rings, and then he thinks, I'm going to try this. And that might be going back to Fury before the second Wilder fight, where he starts to dance around and use the jab and use every inch of that 6'9" to lean back and make you miss and frustrate you and pick you apart. Or the Fury we saw in his last couple of fights, where he comes behind that real solid left-hand jab and he pushes you back and he blocks and counters rather than make you miss. He can win a variety of different ways, where Dillian Whyte has to go forward, put pressure on Tyson Fury and make him panic if he can. And when he hits him and hurts him, as we've seen with Fury, his powers of recovery are quite special. He needs to hit him, hurt him, and not let him off the leash. If he can hurt him and he get him on, and he got his foot on his throat, You got to keep that pressure on. That's imperative. If he doesn't do that, then he might regret any ounce of energy he gives Fury to escape. He'll regret it. And for Fury, he can box it from range and frustrate him, or I think he can do that catch and counter, block with the hand and counter. And if he can back Dillian Whyte up, there's no way Dillian Whyte can win.
Weakness wise, then, if you were stepping in the ring with him, like, imagine just that you were, quite a lot heavier than you are, about 25 years younger. What would you be? What approach would you be taking to Tyson Fury? What approach would you be taking to Dillian Whyte?
Well, for Whyte, if I was Fury, for Whyte's got a really snappy jab, but he doesn't use it enough. The jab that he uses more often is a pushing jab, which means if it hits you, it's solid, but it's slow. And he brings it back low, which is the worst thing you can do. So it goes out slow and comes back low. So he gives you an opportunity to fire that right hand over the top. Now, Dillian Whyte has a long reach, but Fury has a longer reach. So Dillian Whyte being the shorter fighter will sometimes get in the distance, and you're surprised that he can reach you because you think you've got him into your jab. But you won't get that. You won't get that same luxury with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury can literally feint, take a half a step back, throw the jab, the slow, lazy jab of Dillian Whyte, and fire that right hand over the top continuously. And that could be a weapon where he just wears Dillian Whyte down. And also, just make Dillian Whyte miss. When he gets in close, Fury's a better inside fighter than people give him credit for. He can tie you up, spin you, turn you. And I think that can be a tactic that use Dillian Whyte's strengths against him. For the other way, I think Fury will want to show off at times. So you make it, when a fighter is technically better than you, you make your fight at a pace he doesn't want to fight at, which is a high intensity pace. Just make him work constantly, because a thinking fighter likes to set themselves to show off, to throw a punch. They want to, there's thought behind every movement they make. So you make them rush their work, make them make a mistake, and just make sure you're in range to make him pay for it.
Interesting. So, it is. It's very interesting. I mean, just listening to that dynamic, when you watch so many fights on television, and when you're talking to somebody who's been there and done that. So, how do you see it? I mean, the nitty-gritty question really is, how do you see it unfolding? Who's going to come out on top and why? I
think in a fight like this, I think you tend to think, how do you win? And how do you win? How does one win? How does the other one win? And the fact that Fury can win in more than one way, you have to make him a huge favourite. I think Dillian has to commit himself. Now, the good thing about Dillian Whyte, and why we all like him, why he's always an exciting fight, why he always gets paid good money, is that he commits with every shot. We love him for that. Everything he throws is the punch to put you to sleep. This is it. I'm going home after this shot. But with that, he makes mistakes. He can get himself into trouble, as we've seen with when he boxed Alexander Povetkin. He got knocked out with a lovely uppercut. That'll be his undoing. The fact, I think that he will overcommit. He will make a mistake. And Fury will, you'll either walk him down and keep a nice tight guard, or you can dance around. And I think Fury can change tact mid-round, which is almost impossible to do, especially in a fight of this magnitude, to do that. And he's done it for world title, so I think he can do it again. And I feel that he will continuously hit Whyte enough to stop him late. I think that's what it's going to go. Heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. You know that. But we've seen Fury get off the floor off the biggest puncher on the planet more than once. His powers of recovery, he doesn't deserve credit for this. He's born with this. His powers of recovery are quite special. He recovers and he boxes with the same composure. That's important. When he gets hurt, he doesn't panic. He boxes with the same composure as he did before he got hurt. And that's a gift. And that's where you got to hit him, hurt him, and continuously hurt him. No one's been able to do that yet. I'm not sure the crudeness of Dillian Whyte is enough to do that. But I think it's going to be a really fun fight. And I think Fury, the way he is, will have his little bits of adversity where he will get tagged and hurt. But I think he loves that. And I think the new Fury we see now, he doesn't need to dance around to make you miss anymore. He knows he can stand in range and block you, put pressure on you. This new jab he got with Sugar Hill, the Kronk gym, the famous gym from Detroit, they turn their left foot forward when they throw that left-hand jab. It's not a left jab, it's a ramrod left hand. And they hit you, wherever they hit you, it pushes you back. and he'll use that so well against Dillian Whyte. And if he can do that, then I think Dillian's really up against it. So you've got to go with your head, and you've got to say, if Fury doesn't outbox him, beat him on points quite wide margin, then he stops him late.
There we go. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, Barry, to talk to you and to get the benefit of your expertise and experience. So Tyson Fury to win it either on points or with a late stoppage. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much, and we'd love to speak to you again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, take care. Thanks for having me.